during exercise. And as a result of that, the person's tolerance to exercise improves. As a result of that, too, we feel that his susceptibility to heart disease decreases. At the present time, here in Dallas, we have at least 7,000 patients involved in our studies. These patients come to go through a complete examination, including a determination of their level of fitness. And then we classify these patients into 5 categories of fitness based on the very poor, poor, fair, good, and excellent category. We find only about 10% of all of our patients reach the excellent category of fitness. But we have found, too, that if they reach the excellent category of fitness, even the good category of fitness, that there seems to be some protection from heart disease, as we've documented in the past 3 years. All right, just exactly how do we approach the next problem? And that is, how do we condition a person? First of all, it's so important to have the stress test in people past 40 years of age, not only to determine his level of fitness, but also determine whether or not they have signs of heart disease. There are so many people in this country that have heart disease that's undiagnosed. Their resting EKG is normal, but their stress electrocardiogram is abnormal, and it's dangerous for these people to be involved in any type of vigorous activity. So it's important first to have a complete evaluation. It becomes mandatory once you pass 35 or 40 years of age. All right, once we determine whether or not a person has signs of heart disease and then determine his level of fitness, then we can individually prescribe an exercise program for him. This is done by one of the physicians in our clinic, in which we tell the people how to exercise, what type of food to eat. We tell them what weight they should reach. And then we use the aerobics point system to give these people goals to reach. And the only thing that we ask then is you work up to a minimum of 30 points per week. If you play an hour of tennis, it's worth 4.5 points. Singles only, and considering players of equal ability. What about such things as golf? You don't get any points for playing golf, particularly if you ride around the golf course. But if you walk and carry your bags, we'll give you 3 points. If you want to run, you can run 6 miles a week, 1.5 miles, 4 times a week to get 30 points. Or you want to cycle, that's going to require 30 miles a week total to get your points cycling. Swimming is probably the single best aerobic exercise, and it requires 1.5 miles total of swimming per week. So yes, the aerobics concept is one of building up cardiovascular pulmonary levels of fitness, hopefully decreasing the incidence of heart disease, but also bringing back pride into a person when he looks in a mirror and sees what he looks like.
Fitness programs come in 2 forms. One is completely rational and one is completely non-rational. One is work, and one is play. One is done for a purpose, and one is done because it's purposeless. So now we have a scientific, rational, working program in any fitness text, like in Cooper's. You can find out how many minutes you have to go at what speed and how many times a week. And that's for people who have found what they want to do, but have let themselves go. Their back is to the wall. They can't do it anymore. They can't cut the mustard. They're falling asleep. They're not keeping up their quota. They're good at what they do, but because they've let their body-mind process go, they're beginning to do it very badly. And being driven back to the wall, they're willing to put up with something that is dull and boring and meaningless in order to get back in shape. What we have to admit is that exercise programs have failed. And the reason they fail is just this attendance to things that have purpose rather than meaning. You know, all this stuff about stopping smoking, stopping drinking, that's going ass backwards. See, if you get into something that you really love to do and it's joyful and it's addictive and physical, you automatically stop these things. Before I started running, I was getting bombed out about every weekend, falling asleep in front of the TV. I didn't smoke because I was too cheap, but I would have. Anyway, when I started running, all these things automatically left. You know, Gandhi once said, don't give up anything until you don't need it anymore. You still need to smoke and drink unless you get into your play, believe it.
Susie Chaffee found her play as a child on the snow-swept hillsides of Vermont. And it took on life-size dimensions as she skied her way to Grenoble in 1968 as captain of the United States Olympic ski team. Fitness and conditioning are essential to the success of the world-class athlete. Susie believes they are also essential components of the complete person.
think I was first aware of physical fitness intellectually when I was 21 after I retired from the '68 Olympics. And all of a sudden, I didn't feel so good. I moved to New York City and, really got involved in the challenges of business. And luckily, I had a girlfriend who was a top model who said, "Suze, you got to get into gymnastics when you're in the city." And I really found that was my salvation. And not only that, I started doing ski films and inventing interesting ways of doing skiing, like a ballet on skis and jumps and mogul skiing. And that's when I really helped start freestyle skiing, a way to creatively express myself through sports and stay fit. And so I found that to really get my life to work, I needed sports. And it just keeps me very positive and much more efficient in everything I do.
Each of us is an animal, a child, an artist, and a saint. And Emerson said, be first a good animal. See, we got to be a good animal. We're sitting around not being animals. I've gotten down to where I'm a good animal now. You can do that too. You'll be your particular breed of animal. And then a child, so you can find your place. Find out what that thing is that puts you in that magic moment where everything, the whole world falls away from you. And then an artist, because it's only in creativity that you really have the energy. That in play you become creative, and then you apply it later. But you never have an original thought unless you're in action. Nietzsche said that. Never trust a thought that you come upon while you're sitting down. And then finally, we have to be saints. We have some way to be a hero. And sport provides a theater for heroism. I can go in a 6-mile race and live, die, and be born again in those 6 miles. In about 30 minutes, I can go through tensions and trials and challenges that I haven't experienced in a year in my day-to-day living. Then I think what happens is my running has, for me, begins to inform your whole life. It gets inside of your entire existence. So your entire waking day has to do now with being a runner in some way. So I'm a runner doctor, runner father, runner husband, and I'm the better for it. Because I have the energy now, the physical energy, I have the creative energy, and God help me, I'll get the spiritual energy out of it too.
The question then is not whether we can afford the time and effort to be fit, but whether we can afford not to. The weakest among us can adopt a sport and a fitness program. Only the strongest can hope to survive without one. The game plan for survival begins with the decision to find your way to fitness, then set and achieve your personal fitness goals. Find your fitness through sport, as Dr. Sheehan says, and your salvation through fitness, like Susie Chaffee. Putting physical activity back into your life will help you make the discoveries that these people have made. That a half hour of running or swimming will not only burn away the calories from that martini or two, it will diminish the need for them. One learns that time opens up for the fit person. His workday is more productive. His leisure time and weekends hold more potential for relaxation and fun. The choice is yours. You can pull the emergency cord and stop the train. You can return to your body and enjoy a new vision of life expectancy. A game plan for survival has been presented in cooperation with the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports. Life expectancy.
That's all. I really can't improve on that. I've seen that thing about 700 times, and it still affects me. Sometimes only the Bach at the end, the Brandenburg Concerto, that kind of stirs you. Because really what we're here for is something as non-rational as music and art and that sort of stuff. Things that make life worth living are not rational. And one of them is the Boston Marathon. The text for today
those of you who haven't made church, and even those who have. You know, Emerson said that next to good preaching, he liked bad preaching because it gave him time to think. And so I'm about to preach. That's the gospel that you just heard, and this will be the exegesis of that gospel, and more or less the theology of running. And that's the topic for today. I passed the South Church, Old South Church, I guess. Everything here is old. And the sermon for today, of course, is Victory is Ours, Thank God. The message of Phidippides. And that's probably as good a text as any, and I could take that. But I usually like the one of Irenaeus, one of the ancient fathers, who said, "The glory of God is man fully functioning." And using that text, I'd like to talk about why we race. We are gathered, you see, in the home of the race, the race. There are other races, but this is the race. My father used to call Boston the Mecca of medicine. And it's here really where American thought was generated. Every American that I admire, and I think most of those that you admire, are Emersonians. Emerson preached the infinitude of the common man. And this race is proof of the infinitude of the common man. It's a proof that life is a common experience in which we all have the capabilities. See? And so it is that text. The glory of God is man fully functioning. Further, you see that they've always referred to Boston as the Athens of the New World. And it is here where we have the classical ideas were retained. And so what I'd like to do today is describe to you my idea of why we race. Now, in the beginning of that film was, why do we run? People, non-runners watch and wonder why we run. They're completely mystified as why we race. You can give logical answers for running, but nothing logical about racing. And what I'd like to do is suggest to you that there are three elements to the race, and they are of Greek origin. The first is what the Greeks call askesis, or training. And that's what everybody who jogs and runs but doesn't race does. They train. They are in the business of perfecting the human instrument. You know? Taking this body, and the first thing, be a good animal. Emerson stole that line from Spencer. Said, if you wish to be a success in this life, you must first be a good animal. You know, I remember when I first started back in the 60s, there were no races. So I joined a high school cross-country team and made the JV. And I know, I used to come down that last 200 or 300 yards and they start yelling, "Animal, animal, animal." That was to mean go berserk, go berserk. Later I heard Billy say one time, our Billy, is there any other Billy? I heard Billy once say, if you want to win a race, you have to go a little berserk. So if you wish to be a success in this life, you have to be a good animal. And it's really something on this day to be saying, because it's the equivalent of what St. Paul said when he said, put on the new man. The new man is not tempted to do bad, you see. The new man has no inclination to do anything other than that's good. And when we become the good animal, you see, we begin to operate as if we belong here. Paul White, these names keep coming up when you go in Boston. I saw the Paul Dudley White bicycle trail next to the Charles. Paul White, when he was 80, the great cardiologist, when he was 80, he was tooling around Boston on his bike. But one of his sayings was, we were meant to be field animals. See, these things recur over the centuries. Nothing new about health. Nothing new about health. The child born in the 5th century BC was the same as one born today. All the rules were established back in Greece. And here's White saying, you know, to the amazement of his fellow physicians, we were meant to be field animals. That cut down his practice probably in half right there. To be out in the open air. Well, again, you see, I don't know who he eventually treated when he got to be out in the open air. He said to be always active and eat only when we're hungry. Do you know we're the only animal that eats when we're not hungry? Right? So you have to become a good animal to start eating the way you should, sleeping the way you should, weighing what you should, and you should move as this was your habitat, as indeed it is. We should feel as home here as Arnold Palmer feels on a golf course, because we become good animals, and that's the first thing that happens in this ascesis. The athletic training, the mental training, that was the Greek word for training, and they train the body as they train the mind. You read Plato's Republic, where he says the wrestler should study philosophy, and the philosopher should lift weights. And the idea was we are body, mind, and spirit. The Greeks knew that, and we haven't improved on it. And what we've done is gone back to the basics here and become good animals. That's the first thing. So when I go out and speak to non-runners, those unwashed heretics out there, there's a program on a New York radio station that says, "Give me 22 minutes and we'll give you the world," you know. So I'm going out there, "Give me 22 minutes and I'll change your life." And I'm trying to convince them now to run and get all the good things that we get out of running. And of course, the first thing we get is energy. We fill our day. Back in 1910, Arnold Bennett wrote a book, How to Live on 24 Hours a Day. Came on this great secret. We're not going to get any more time. That's all we get. You get 8 hours to sleep. That's 16 hours to work out everything in your life. Your domestic bliss, your professional success, the salvation of your soul, all in 16 hours. The trouble is the average American gets about 8. Slips into a semi-coma at that point. Roused, goes to work the next day. In other words, we pay for our work by recuperating on a lounge chair. Now, we should get those 16. I like to think of that as life expectancy. What do we expect when we get up in the morning? Do we bounce out of bed thinking what a great day we're going to have? Of course. What do other people do? They pull the covers over their head, you see. Because I found out, I started running at 45, I doubled my life expectancy. In the last, whatever that years are, you get a little trouble with the calculations at my age, but somewhere around 25, 24 years, I've lived 48. I doubled my life expectancy because the end of my work became the beginning of my day, and I'm sure you've all experienced that. And you think back when Seneca said, each day is a lifetime. And Marcus Aurelius said, live each day if it were your last. Make each day a masterpiece. That's the first thing that happens when you go into this ascesis. I saw TV last week, and Pete Rose was on, and he said, I play each game as if it were my last. Because it is your last. There's another fellow that talks on New York radio. We got good programs back in our hometown, Arthur Rush Jr. And when he closes off, he has this little thing he says to his wife, because he said, this is for Edna. I assume it's his wife. And he says, yesterday is a canceled check. Tomorrow is a promissory note. Today is all we have. We know that. You know, you can talk about past races, but nobody listens. You know? I remember when Dick Williams was the manager here for the Sox. Now, not too many people my age, I guess. And Sparky Lyle was their reliever. And he'd come in with the base